It is the successful people that fail to realize what contributed to their success. And data allows you to look at that objectively.
Welcome to the Fractional Edge podcast, the ultimate podcast where we unlock the power of workforce planning and discuss the rapidly growing fractional executive staffing strategies to supercharge your business.
Meet your hosts, Fraser, a workforce planning expert, fractional chief human resources officer, and founder of C4 Talent.
And Jason Huett, the sensei of marketing, fractional chief marketing officer, and founder of Fifth Degree Marketing.
We'll bring you insights from seasoned pros, inspiring success stories, and actionable strategies to optimize your valued workforce.
Don't miss this chance to upgrade your business with top industry leaders in today's competitive landscape. So tune in and learn how to unleash your competitive edge.
Hi, welcome to the Fractional Edge podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Huett. I'm a CMO, and with me is my wonderful co-host, Fraser, a CHRO. She is also the founder of C4 Talent. And today we're very excited. We are here with Dr. Kruti Lehenbauer. Did I pronounce that okay?
Yes.
And she's asked us to refer to her as Kruti, which I have a tough time. Any doctor, I always prefer doctor, but for today we'll go with Kruti. And she's a fractional chief data officer, our first one on the show. So empty your cups, get ready, because this is going to be a very entertaining episode. Kruti, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. I'm super excited about being like the first data person that you had. And I'm glad because there are very few fractional chief data officers out there. So it's hard to come by them, but I think that it's the most versatile fractional executive position out there. So I'm really excited about this.
I have a feeling after this, Carol, that we're going to feel like we're going to need to talk to a chief data officer. That's just my inclination here is that we'll probably have a lot of improvement.
Podcasting for our businesses. Yeah, I totally see that.
Well, Kruti, tell us, I'll just kick off with the first question. And if you could just give us kind of a career background, how did you become a fractional, and what did your career look like up until now?
Well, I was 5 years old when I decided that I'm going to become a teacher. And I just didn't know what I was going to teach. I started by experimenting on all my relatives and cousins. And, so I grew up, and then I was like, at every step of my life, I decided what I did not want to teach and who I did not want to teach. So it was pretty easy. Like, okay, kids, yeah, not happening. No, I don't have anything against kids. Just it requires the amount of patience that I may not have. And when I hit grad school, it was more like, okay, well, I guess I can work with adults, and that would be a lot easier. So I went through, finished my doctorate, and went into academia. Loved teaching. And I did that until last year. So about 20 years of teaching experience, writing research papers. And I'm a data person. I've always been a data person. And so it was just a question of, what is catching your interest, Mr. Colleague or, Miss Student? And then I could just help them work it out, because I've done things on how to commercialize the moon. Like, from a data perspective, it's very easy to come up with answers, right? And on the other hand, done bank frauds, done analysis of all kinds of stuff. So, in the last 10 years or so, after I kind of reached that whole full professor and all that, I'm like, okay, I'm only halfway through my career. What do I do next? Like, what do I really want to do when I grow up? Because I can continue teaching, but it's something that I can still do. I don't have to be a formal teacher in order to help people. And that's where I decided that, I'm just going to go full out, take all the risks, put everything I got on the table, and start providing full-time data services and consulting. And luckily, I've worked with a few clients in the last 12 years, and they've liked me enough to stick with me for all those years. So I was able to take this risk. And I've been providing them services basically as a fractional chief data and analytics officer. depending on what their needs were. And so now that's what I do. So now I'm pretending that I'm all grown now, and that's what I'm doing. So
So when you think about the clients that you're working with right now, tell us just a little bit about when you started with them, what did they think their issues were? And then once you came on board, how better defined or clear were they once they got your magic hands on the data and analytics?
well, that's an interesting question because as you guys know with your experience, every client has very unique needs. But typically when it comes to data, even if the client is pursuing data analysis themselves, the question often is what matters? Because, does the size of the data matter? Does the context of the data matter? Does the content matter? Or is it just okay for people to have various sorts of analytics information that is provided to them, which is typically what C-suite people do. They look at these analytics, they look at these outcomes, these measures of KPIs, and make decisions based on that. But typically, nobody takes that step back to understand and analyze if they're using the right metrics. And I'll give you an example that a lot more people can relate to in terms of data. One of the most common things that we've seen in the last 10 years or so is people burn out. And it shows in the fact that they are not engaged at work. There's an employee engagement disconnect. But if you look at all the surveys out there, survey after survey after survey is asking people to self-analyze or have their bosses look at what they're doing to determine if, you're not being productive enough, or I'm not being productive enough, or whatever the case may be. But they miss the fact that these are the effects, that there's a cause. And that cause might be very difficult to analyze over water cooler conversations. That's where a data guy can come in and look. I know I said guy, I meant person. Comes in and looks at the data. What is happening? Why is it that this team is consistently having people that are not engaged? And why is it that this team is got similar kind of people, but they are super engaged? What is the difference? What is the root cause? Is it the manager? Is it the management style? Can that be edited? How do I measure these intangibles? I mean, the tangibles are easy to measure, but even there, one of the things I found is, and I hear this all the time from clients and potential clients, oh, we already got that figured out. We are doing amazing in this particular KPI. And you go, okay, what exactly is causing that success? Because if your success is hinging on one client that provides you 80% of your revenue and you lose that client, suddenly you're dead in the water. What have you done to diversify? Have you identified?
Very rarely does somebody actually go, we've been great. Do they ever go, gee, I wonder how or why and how do we replicate this? Very few CEOs will stop and pause and go, damn, we had a banner year. Why do you think that was?
Exactly. Because when it comes to failure, everybody has that sense of emergency and they will delve into the root causes. It is the successful people that fail to realize what contributed to their success. And data allows you to look at that objectively. Okay, Carol, you're successful not just because you are such a charming person, but also because you've worked your ass off for your whole life. And you have these skills which are tangible, measurable, effective. And you are using them effectively, which is why it contributes to your success. But that self-recognition, people might have it as individuals, but when it comes to their businesses, I am appalled how often I hear people who are like, we are doing amazing. And you go like, why? They're like, well, because we are amazing. No, but why? That sound like a 5-year-old sometimes.
I love it. I love it. We hear one of the things that I think I learned back in 1998. Yes, I'm dating myself. Is always ask 5 whys. right? Just keep asking why 5 times and just make sure that what that does, it just helps people come to clarity and really kind of think deeper than that first layer.
Yeah, this is interesting. So I really, really well with this. I had an opportunity to work with a RevOps team for a decent sized ed tech company, and it was my first exposure to people that really were good with data. And it's funny because in marketing, everyone assumes, oh, you're a CMO, so here's a data set. Can you do something with it? And it's funny because, yeah, we typically use the data, but manipulating it and asking, we could ask the questions, but certainly manipulating it, getting it into form is not something that we're real good at. But at that first point of contact with this company, I realized, wow, there are people that really study this like yourself. And do you find, I love the fact that you've asked the questions, the more important questions. And I think stereotypically, maybe people assume, hey, you're the data person, so you just are going to give us the data, but you're asking kind of the foundational questions of why, which I think is just incredibly intelligent approach. So can you think of, I'm kind of curious, I've got so many questions right now. So I'm going to limit myself here, then I'll pass back to Carol. How much of your work intersects with, does any of it intersect with security? Is that a part of what you do as well? Or is that left to a different officer in the company?
Typically, when I work with companies that have data security reasons to have data, I work with a lot of banks. Let me just use that as an example. And they always have all this private information that they have to keep. There's some of it which is reportable, but when they send the reports, they cannot give out any private information of their clients, et cetera, et cetera. So what I do in those cases is I will work with their information officer or whoever is responsible for their data security and make sure that I am exchanging information on secured platforms only. And if I get the data from them, I can request, because for instance, people's social security numbers, I don't need that. I need to know what they're doing with it. I do need their first and last names in many cases, or their addresses. But then once I get that information, once I do my analysis, that's all deleted. And that's where working with the information officer would help. I've had a couple of smaller businesses where they don't really have that. And in that case, I make sure that their data is protected. But in those cases, I'll avoid asking for any identifiable information that belongs to their clients, just to keep my site safe and secured from whatever, I do know a lot of data security people, and I know that I can set up my systems overnight if I needed to. I just not need it, because luckily most companies that I work with have massive and amazing systems, which is it's just easier for me to go in there, work there, and then remove what I don't need. So
makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, yeah. So Carol, I'll jump back to you. Yeah.
Okay. No. So one of the a question that popped in my mind, because you said that you work with banks, so those are relatively large institutions, and I think to myself, well, of course they're going to have tons of data from which they need to do analytics. Can you give our listenership kind of an understanding of how does your role impact an organization when it's different sizes? Like, how could a small business use someone like you versus a mid-size? Where do you have the biggest bang? And then, of course, the large, what's the impact you make there?
So for very large businesses, let me start in the reverse order because it's easier. For very large businesses, they have very specific needs. And that's where a data consultant can do most of the work, because you really need zero skin in the game to do what needs to be done. They usually have the departments, and so you're working for a department rather than for the company as a whole. For mid-sized businesses, which is, like you said, the sweet spot for a lot of fractionals, they often have various sources of data. And that happens because they have their marketing team, they have their sales team, they have their finance team, and they all collect data in silos or use data in silos. And one of the things that they miss, kind of going back to what Jason said earlier, the marketing guy does not necessarily know what the finance guys do, or does not realize how they can use each other's data. I'll give you a little hidden tool that I used for one of my clients, right? Like mid-sized business. When customers don't convert into purchasers, so you have potential customers, your CRM shows that this person is interacting with all your social media, everything, but isn't buying anything. Why? Right? And that behavior needs to be analyzed. Now, when you look at the KPI, it may not affect the bottom line upfront, but it could affect it later on. Maybe your price is just a tiny bit higher than where your sweet spot market would be. How would you identify that if you're constantly making money? Another very common issue, we are thinking about giving a Black Friday discount for our highest selling product. And the question is, wait, your highest selling product, people are not sensitive about its price. They love it. They're willing to pay for it. Give the discount on your lower selling products because they're already going there to buy what they've always wanted for the price they're willing to pay. So the WTP and elasticity analysis. Okay, I'm bringing my economics up here.
I love this. I love it.
But the willingness to pay is something that is missed often when we look at aggregates. Because when you look at aggregates, you're looking at market segments, and market segmentation is beautiful. You can create these amazing, colorful clusters, and it looks awesome. Except we are so focused on the central point that we miss all those people that are on the boundaries. Why are they on the boundaries? How can we attract them to the center, right? What do we need to do? And that's the part many companies in the mid-sized market miss, because they are so focused on one or the other product, or, oh, this is our latest product and we need to make it the greatest thing ever. Not all of us are Apple. It's not just the latest iPhone. Yes, that's what they market. But you know what? When you go and talk with adults, most of them have stuff that's 6 years old, because we are not teenagers and we can't afford to spend $1,200 every year, Well, maybe we can afford it, but the cost involved in transferring all that. So looking only at the benefits, looking only at the latest and the greatest is not how most of the business people work. They want the most stable answers. And stability comes from knowing what lies underneath. So if you think about like an iceberg, the data is what feeds into that island at the bottom. Like that iceberg comes up and floats because of all that data collecting at the bottom. And if you don't access it, you don't know why you're floating.
I love this conversation because, this is stuff I'm working on with companies every single day. And what's interesting about on the price, kind of willingness to pay, I'm just so surprised because most of the companies I work with approach the marketing from a perspective of, hey, we have this email list and it's Black Friday. We're going to do a blast to everybody. Now, the marketers, of course, we're trying to segment that list down, but we are very well aware that if you had 80 hours in a week and you were looking at that data, you still wouldn't be able to get it into the shape that someone as a trained professional in data operations could do. And the other point that I was going to kind of just highlight that you mentioned is, I guess more of a question would be, how many times in your work, Kruti, are you bringing the questions to the team, and how many times are they bringing it to you? How often are you having to re-guide the conversation because they're not asking the right questions?
Very often. Very often. So I start with asking the questions, and it always, without fail, results in more questions coming back. And it's that back and forth. It's that initial connection and then that ongoing connection. So most of the clients that I work with are very well aware that when I send an email, it's most likely not going to be a 2-liner. It's going to be more like a 20 questions. Remember the game? Like, guess what's going on? You ask 20 questions and, at some point you guess the answer and you get it. That's what it feels like from both ends. Because another thing, and kind of going back to where we first started today's conversation, people don't necessarily understand statistics. They know the terms, they know that data matters, But me asking a question like, do you know what the standard deviation is? Or what is the z-score for this value? I'm going to lose them, even though I know what that means. Or if I gave them that answer, oh, your standard deviation shows that you're good to go. So wait, what? Right? But on the other hand, if I say, okay, what is the range in which you price this product? Oh, okay, you're selling on Amazon. You're selling between $15 and $20 depending on, various factors. Can you explain to me what factors you're looking at? And that's where, as a statistician in my mind, I'm drawing a normal distribution curve and thinking about it. But if I say that to them, I've lost them already because everybody is scared of it. So sometimes I have to ask questions just so that I can figure out the behind the scenes math that they are using, but they are not aware that they're using. So one of the things I call myself is like, I'm the data whisperer, or I'm the treasure hunter in the data, because what I have found is majority of the companies don't need to collect any more data. They just need to use what they have. Correct me. So and with small businesses, it's even more beautiful because there are such amazing methods over the years that I've developed and I've worked with and tweaked, where I can go to a restaurant around the corner, mom and pop place, and I can tell them, do you know how many waiters you should hire for your lunch hour? And if they don't have that answer, I can be like, give me 1 hour of your time on a lunch hour day. I'll come in, take the clicks, and I'll tell you exactly how many waiters you need to hire to make sure that you don't lose customers and you still make better profits. Because filling up the floor with waiters wouldn't.
I'll tell you what, this is why your business is so easy to market, is because you can approach any business with that type of an offer. I mean, you got me. I'm salivating here thinking about all the clients that I have that could use your services.
Yeah, you're pretty industry agnostic, aren't you, Kruti?
Yeah. That's the beauty of being a data officer. And that's why I said that fractional chief data officers are probably one of the most versatile fractional positions. Because if we look at the concept behind fractionalism, the concept is we work in various industries. We bring all that experience to whichever industry we are working with. Almost like that whole, when you have collective knowledge, you get a better output. Think about it from like a chat GPT standpoint. All the LLM has learned is from various different sources, and it can combine it all. Fractionals do that. Fractionals are like the chat GPT for the executive team, where they have all this experience from various industries, various, different sources of information that can be brought together to answer specific questions. And a data officer can basically work in conjunction with anybody. You're an HR officer, I can work with you. You are a marketing officer, I can work with you. Ask me what you need, and I'll help us figure out how we can get there. How can you give an objective answer to what could potentially be a very subjective question?
All right, so you brought up the chat GPT. I'm going there.
Go for it.
You're a data person.
Yes.
First off, I just want to know your thoughts, because really chat GPT is about gathering all the data and analyzing it to the extent to give an answer. So first, I kind of want to know your opinion about that. And then I'm going to do the follow-up question, but I'm just going to tell you what it is now, which is, how does this help you, harm you? What do you think about businesses using it? But first, just tell me everything you think about AI.
Okay, I'm going to give a very different kind of an approach to this. Say that ChatGPT has learned everything it needs to know about Star Wars, okay? Which it has, because it's been around forever. And the reason I came up with this example is because I let my kids play around with this. And I said, you ask ChatGPT whatever you like about Star Wars. You know enough about it to know whether it is making sense or not. And see if you can create your own storyline, right? And so I was sitting right here and they were asking all these questions. And here's what I learned. ChatGPT, or any equivalent, artificial intelligence, is going to tell you everything that it has collected in its information, but without any personal touch. It does not know if it is right or wrong. In fact, you've got all those disclaimers. We're just telling you what we think. But I mean, hey, it's up to you to check the authenticity. And here is why ChatGPT doesn't worry me, and it shouldn't worry anybody. It's an artificial intelligence is probably putting it above the realm of what intelligence means. There's a very fine line between being able to regurgitate stuff versus being able to understand stuff. And when it comes to any generative AI, it can only regurgitate. It can adapt its answers based on you saying, oh, here's my customized ChatGPT bot. It's Carol's bot, and it will try to talk and walk and behave like Carol, but it's not Carol. It does not have the experiences that Carol has. It cannot bring that into the conversation. It cannot bring that into the writing. So when it comes to how it helps in terms of data, sure, you want to find out what standard deviation means, go type it up. It'll tell you exactly what it means. It may not make sense to you because it's just regurgitating what is out there on 2 million websites. You really want to understand what standard deviation means? Go ask somebody who understands it innately, and they'll tell you, oh, here's the easiest way to understand standard deviation. How long does it take you to go from your house to your nearest grocery store? 5 minutes? 10? Right? You know what that answer is. Now, I'll ask you, so if I'm going to meet you there at 12 noon, what time would you leave from your house? And you would say, well, if I'm meeting you at noon and it takes me 10 minutes to get there, I'm going to leave at 11:45. And I'll say, why? Because it could be 5 minutes here and there. Here and there. That's your standard deviation.
So, Kruti, I didn't disclose this. My dad was he helped develop tests for the state of Wisconsin, so I heard about standard deviations all the time. Oh my goodness! So I have, this goes back a long ways. You know, what's really interesting is in marketing, and again, I talk a lot about marketing because that's my field. And Carol's probably thinking, oh, I want to talk more about HR, which she'll get to. In marketing, you know, we talk a lot about attribution, and it's interesting because all the CRM software, they have attribution, capability, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult to get granular with attribution. And, the kind of the, one of the main indicators we typically look at is, let's look at a global KPI like revenue. Revenue, there's that relationship between marketing and revenue, and it's a long relationship. It's not usually, hey, you do marketing and you see that return on investment. But how do you use, can you think of an example maybe of a client in marketing, and, how have you used what you know how to do to benefit, say, a CMO or a marketing department?
Well, I have worked with small business owners who typically tend to do their own marketing. And one of the things that I usually tell them is that they shouldn't be trying to do everything themselves and to actually hire a marketing person. So that's my first recommendation. But what I follow it up with is, you have these aspects, you have these potential clients, you have these potential markets. And while I'm not the right person to do the messaging for you, your messaging needs to focus on this aspect of what you're bringing to the market based on what I see. What you're bringing to the table, this is the unique part of it. This stands you out from the rest of the crowd. And it might be based on the data. And the data is competitive analysis. Like, what are other people doing? Why is your product better than theirs? Oh, because you're using the best quality ingredients. I'm not going to name the name of the company, but I'm going to send them an email today because I've been using their product for over 5 years. And something's gone wrong because I know one of the big market platforms that they use have changed their inventory management policy in 2 months. And this is literally, they sent me replacements twice and it's still the wrong item. So that's because of the intermediary that they're using. But if I'm literally going to write to their CMO today. I'm not even kidding you. I have the email and everything set up. And it's basically going to be like, you need help. Your inventory is the problem. Let me, I'm happy to look at your data and tell you what you need to do to fix this before you lose customers who have been loyal. It's your brand that's being affected. And
yeah.
I mean, and that's the beauty of data. The bigger the sample, the more sense it makes. That does not mean that small samples are useless. Small samples are actually the key to finding out when something starts going wrong. Before it hits that revenue KPI and it becomes an issue, you can immediately be like, small sample, you have 5 people were pissed off, figure out what's going on. Don't wait until it becomes 500.
Yeah, that is so true. Because at that point, the data is going to be completely different than if you were to have looked at it before you lost customer number 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear
you. And
you
can, because when it's 5 people, they're easier to please. It's kind of like, what they say in any emergency situation, when you do triage, fix the leaders first, right? Like for the heart attack, right? Like you go with the big things because that will improve your pipeline throughout. It'll improve your performance metrics. It'll build confidence in those that are looking at you. So like this whole going kind of back to the ChatGPT fiasco that the board created, the whole drama.
Yep.
One of the things that happened was they had eyes on them. And the winners that came out of this were the people that stood up for what they believed was true. None of those people, whether they stay with ChatGPT or not, are ever going to have a difficulty in finding jobs again, because the market saw the indication these people have the ability to stand up for what they believe in. It's the same thing with data. That's data right there. 99 people were willing to put their lives on the line for one person. I want one of those 99 people to work for me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Fractional Edge. We hope you enjoyed our insightful discussions and feel inspired to unleash your competitive edge.
Remember to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with the latest episodes. You can also connect with our podcast guests to benefit from their expertise and explore collaboration opportunities by visiting our website, thefractionaledge.com. Join us next time as we continue to explore the power of workforce planning and fractional executives in today's competitive business landscape. Until then, take care and keep growing.